well, 25 years ago, if someone had said, would you like to, focus your work on therapeutic conversations in response to trauma, I would have had no idea that would be me.
Right.
And yet I'm so delighted that it's what's happened over that 25-year period to see now that the temptation to capture people's experience in a way that is medicalised is just more and more a problem. So that when we're working with the effects of trauma, and it might be the trauma of childhood sexual abuse, or it might be the trauma of being forcibly removed from your family, or it might be the trauma of people who've experienced political violence and rape and murder, and they're here seeking asylum, is that if you look at what's happening to most of those people's experience, the language around it is to put a disorder next to it. And I know that I don't want to be critical of trying to understand people's experience, but I do feel really concerned about a language which almost obscures suffering. It almost obscures the human kind of experience of suffering. And, so how are we to be alongside people? How are we to position ourselves in relation to people who've gone through a degree of suffering? And if you think of the people that are what's happening in the world at the moment, it's a very, very good example, who have had to do things way beyond the capacity of most of our wildest imaginations in order to save their lives or create a different life for their children. I don't think there should be a word disorder next to that. I think it's to do with suffering. And so, in wanting to be involved in this work, how can we have a framework and conceptualise a framework that is valid, that satisfies funding criteria, methods of what's legitimate, that is about responding to human suffering and is not about getting trapped into the psychologising of working with disorder. Because a lot of the people that I see, I don't think they have a disorder. I think they're suffering. And the suffering is very heartfelt and painful. But I just feel as if frameworks were legitimised that enabled us to position ourselves in relation to their experience in hopeful ways. And I guess, for those of us who are fortunate to work in a field as we do, there's so many opportunities to have to grapple with complexity. And I don't think I could have done the work on the childhood sexual abuse team without learning and thinking about how operations of power work and how ideas about who we are circulated. And one of the first women that ever came to see me was in her 60s, and she had waited till her mother had died before she came to talk, because she had tried to speak about the effects of abuse to her mother, and in that day, in that era, it was very hard. There wasn't a language, there wasn't a way of going about speaking, and children were very often disbelieved, as she was. And so she'd waited all that time with all sorts of effects in her own life, but then was still wanting to make a change in her own life. And so I had to think about, what's going on to particularly for women, that they were the main people that I was working with. What's going on in women's experience? How does abuse actually work? What is it actually doing in a woman's life? How does it have her feel about her body? How is it expressed in her body and her mind? And how are these, very unequal relationships of power that would enable abuse to occur, how is that sanctioned and how does that go on? So, the work in that field became an opportunity to have to learn and grapple with the complexities of all these things, to find a helpful and hopeful and purposeful way of responding to what women and men were telling me. And so a lot of feminist writing was very, very important and very significant in terms of looking at relationships of gender and how these experiences have been very gendered. I think it very much fits with wanting to look at the biggest possible picture of someone's life and what they care about and what they want for their life and what their hopes are, alongside of what might be problematic. And I guess that leads me into another really significant learning that's been life-changing for me and in a really constructive way. And that was sometime later joining a team which worked with the effects of childhood sexual abuse, mainly on women and sometimes on men. But in that work, it became just imperative to think about relationships of power and how people's experience of who they are is constructed. Like what ideas in our societies contribute to constructing or building or people's sense of who they are in the world, and thinking about in relation to the effects of childhood sexual abuse, wanting to think a lot about the interaction of gender and power and finding an analysis for relations of power that was helpful. And I could say a lot more about that, but that was like a massive turning point in my whole life and work. Really.
And I'm curious about that analysis, like looking at what's going on, what's going on here. How does something like abuse get sanctioned? What is it that is happening in women's lives, and how they're being constructed? What is the link with that and this other, this aspect that you were talking about before of getting the biggest possible picture of a person and seeing what they bring or what they give value to, the relationships of power. And seeing the people in that biggest view of them, that biggest lens, to look at people through. Are they part of the same thing? Are they linked? Are they separate? How you see it?
I think it's incredibly linked because how people, if we think about the example of the effects of sexual abuse for many people that come to see us, then they would say it's incredibly linked. That how their ideas of themselves has been shaped is strongly influenced by dominant ideas in our culture. Like how some adult experience is privileged over the experience of children, how children might not be believed, how certain institutional practices would promote secrecy, and I needn't say all these things, but so that is shaping of a person's sense of who they are in the world. And so learning to find a framework that enables us to grapple with that and to see the effect of these dominant ideas and to be able to talk about them and unpack them so that people can then begin to experience themselves differently according to the much bigger picture. Became really fascinating for me to want to be able to do that in a purposeful and rigorous way.
Like that, there's that dominant story you're saying of how people get constructed from those discourses. But there's you made a gesture like this of seeing the bigger picture. Being able to look at that, but see that there's more.
Yeah, because I don't think we can get to the more without also seeing the way in which those dominant ideas have shaped people's experience or become like inscribed physically in their body.